I used to believe healing meant silence. That if I could just stop the noise, the craving, the shame, the memories, then I'd be okay. But I learned the hard way. Healing doesn't come from numbing the pain. It comes from walking straight into it, wide awake, unguarded, vulnerable. My name is Noah. For years, I spiraled through addiction, using anything to quiet the ache I carried inside. I lied to myself. Lied to the people I loved. I nearly lost everything. I did lose a lot. But somewhere in the wreckage, when I had nothing left to offer, I found something unexpected. A quiet whisper. A light I couldn't see but somehow felt. I didn't know it then, but I was being guided. This is not a story of perfection. It's not a clean, easy arc. It's raw. It's filled with nights I didn't think I'd survive, moments where hope felt like a cruel joke. But it's also about grace, the kind you don't earn, but receive anyway. This is my story of healing without running, without numbing. Of choosing to feel everything, even the pain, so I could finally be free. It's about the higher power that never gave up on me, even when I had. And it's about what happens when you stop asking for escape, and start asking for strength. Now begins the journey. One part at a time. They say addiction is a thief. It steals time, trust, joy, and leaves you with nothing but a shadow of who you once were. But for me, it started as a gift. A way out. A false salvation. The first time I got high, it didn't feel like I was escaping, it felt like I was arriving. Like I'd finally found a version of myself I could live with. Confident. Numb. Untouchable. But the truth was, I was already broken long before the substances. I just didn't have the words for it. My father's silence. My mother's tears behind closed doors. The ache of never being enough. I was a kid who learned early on that feelings were dangerous. That weakness was punished. So I became what the world seemed to want, invisible, agreeable, hollow. I didn't seek help because I didn't believe I deserved it. The high became my compass. My peace. And later, my prison. I told myself I had it under control. I could stop whenever I wanted. But every time I tried, the silence screamed louder. The emptiness caved in. I wasn't running from drugs. I was running from myself. Relationships crumbled. Jobs vanished. I watched my reflection change into someone I didn't recognize, and still, I couldn't stop. The more I lost, the tighter I held on to the lie that I was okay. That I didn't need help. That I could handle it. The truth? I was drowning. And I was so deep in the water, I didn't even know I was underwater. But rock bottom isn't a moment. It's a slow descent. And I was still falling. There's this myth about rock bottom. That it's one moment, a crash, a final gasp, a dramatic end. But that's not how it was for me. My bottom had layers. Each one worse than the last, but somehow not bad enough to make me stop. Not yet. First, I lost my apartment. I'd missed too many rent payments, spent too much on keeping the high going. I moved in with a friend who gave me a couch and a warning. Don't bring your mess here. I brought it anyway. He kicked me out 3 weeks later. Next was my job. I stopped showing up. Or when I did, I was twitchy, late, strung out. I remember the look my manager gave me, not anger, just disappointment. Like he knew I was lost, but couldn't help. I started sleeping in my car. Then I lost that too. Each time I fell, I thought, this has to be it. This is the bottom. But somehow, I kept digging. I lied to my family, said I was fine, just between jobs. I stole from my sister. Took jewelry from her bedroom drawer, pawned it for less than it was worth, and told myself she'd never notice. She did. She cried when she confronted me, not because of the theft, but because she knew the truth. I was disappearing. The lowest layer wasn't a dramatic overdose or some epic collapse. It was a Tuesday. I hadn't eaten in days. I was curled up behind a dumpster behind a liquor store, shaking, sweating, and so full of shame I couldn't even cry. That's when I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Not a word. I was alive technically, But I wasn't living. I was surviving like an animal. A ghost. And yet, even then, I wasn't ready to stop. That's the thing people don't get. The pain wasn't the worst part. It was the fear of who I'd be without the drugs. They were all I knew. They'd become my shield. My silence. My identity. But somewhere, buried under the filth and failure, a part of me still wanted to live. I just didn't know how. Not yet. It was barely a whisper at first. A thought I didn't invite. A voice I almost ignored. You don't have to die like this. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was something my mom used to say. Maybe it was God. Maybe it was just the last sane part of me, clawing for air. But I remember how it felt, different. Not like the usual noise in my head. Not shame, not guilt, not craving. Just calm. Like someone had lit a single candle in a pitch-black room. That whisper stayed with me as I wandered the streets that night, hollow and shaking. I hadn't used that day. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't find anything. My dealer was gone. My money was gone. My body was wrecked. I was out of options. I'd never been clean that long, 12 hours, and it felt like the world was peeling off my skin. But still, that voice repeated itself, steady and strange. You don't have to die like this. It didn't offer a solution. Just a choice. And for the first time, I realized maybe I did have one. I walked into a church that night. Not because I believed. I didn't. I was angry at anything holy. But the door was open, and it was warm inside, and I was so tired of the cold. There was no service going on, no music, just a janitor mopping the floor. He looked up at me, this filthy, broken thing that wandered in off the street, and he didn't flinch. He didn't ask me to leave. He said, "You hungry?" I nodded. He walked me to the back, gave me a sandwich, and let me sit in silence. I cried eating that sandwich. Not because it tasted good, it didn't, but because I hadn't felt human in so long. I hadn't been seen without being judged. That night wasn't a miracle. But it was the first thread I held on to. The first time I didn't feel completely alone. And that whisper? It stayed. Even after I left. Even when I used again the next day. It didn't shame me. It just waited. You don't have to die like this. I started to believe it might be right. It took me 3 more weeks to make the call. Even with that whisper echoing inside me, I kept using. I told myself I wasn't ready. That I needed one more hit, one more day, one more numb night before I could face whatever came next. But the truth was, I was scared. Scared of detox. Scared of being sober. Scared of myself. But that whisper never left. And neither did the memory of that janitor's eyes. The way he looked at me like I was still worth something. It chipped away at the story I'd built, this lie that I was beyond saving. That I was too far gone. Then one morning, I woke up on a bench with dried blood on my shirt and no memory of how it got there. I couldn't keep pretending. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled flyer someone had handed me outside the church. A hotline number for a rehab center. I'd laughed when they gave it to me. I wasn't that kind of addict. I didn't need them. But now, I had no one else to call. My fingers trembled as I dialed. I almost hung up when it started ringing. But then a voice answered, warm and steady. "Thank you for calling. How can we help you?" I couldn't speak. Not at first. My throat clenched. I think they were used to that. The woman didn't rush me. She waited. And when I finally managed to say, "I think I need help," she didn't ask for proof. She just said, "Okay. You're in the right place." It didn't feel real. She gave me the address, told me someone could pick me up. I had no idea how I'd get there. I had nothing. No ID. No clean clothes. Just a backpack full of shame. But somehow, that was enough. When the van pulled up to that gas station later that afternoon, I almost ran. I looked at the doors, at the driver, at my reflection in the window. All of me wanted to disappear. But I didn't. I got in. That was the first call. The first yes. The first surrender. It wasn't brave. It was desperate. But it was real. And that's where the healing began. They didn't lie about detox. It was hell. The shake started within hours. Sweat poured from me like rain. My skin felt like it was crawling off my bones. My head pounded. My stomach flipped. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe without wanting to scream. But what hurt more than the physical withdrawal was the silence, being stuck alone in a white room with no escape, no high, no noise to block the truth. The staff at the center had seen it all. They didn't flinch when I cursed or cried or begged to leave. They kept showing up with water, meds, check-ins. They spoke to me like I was human, even when I didn't feel like one. I remember this nurse, maybe late 50s, gray streaks in her bun. She sat with me during one of the worst nights. I was shaking so hard I bit through my lip. I told her I couldn't do it. That I wasn't strong enough. She didn't argue. She just said, "You don't need to be strong. You just need to stay." Stay. That word hit me hard. Because I had spent my whole life running, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But now, there was nowhere else to go. No more escape routes. Only this room. This moment. This pain. This possibility. Detox stripped me bare. Every lie I told myself was gone. I saw my reflection in that tiny mirror above the sink, sunken eyes, bruised arms, a man I didn't recognize. But for the first time, I didn't look away. I saw the cost. I saw the wreckage. And beneath the shame, I saw something else. A flicker. A beginning. When the worst of it passed, when the vomiting stopped and my hands could finally hold still, I stood up. My legs were weak. My body felt like paper. But I walked into the hallway. Not as a victim. Not as an addict. Just as me, whatever that meant now. Detox didn't heal me. But it opened the door. The real work was still waiting. One of the hardest parts of recovery isn't the cravings. It's the mirror. Every morning, I stood in front of it and saw what was left. My body, thinner than I remembered. My eyes, older than my age. My face, stripped of lies and chemical illusion. There's no hiding in sobriety. Not from yourself. In one of the sessions, we were told to write a letter to the person we were before addiction. I stared at the blank page for an hour. I didn't know how to talk to that version of me. He felt like a stranger, naive, scared, hungry for love, full of hope he didn't know how to hold. Eventually, I wrote, "I'm sorry I left you behind. I thought I was protecting you. I thought numbing the pain would save us. But it only buried you deeper. I want you to know, I see you now. And I'm trying to come back." Writing that wrecked me. But it also cracked something open. I realized I couldn't heal until I made peace with the parts of me I abandoned. The boy who just wanted to be safe. The young man who thought he had to be strong all the time. The version of myself who was never allowed to grieve. We started doing inner child work. It sounded ridiculous at first. But sitting with that pain, really sitting, forced me to feel things I'd numbed for years. Memories of being ignored, overlooked, dismissed. I remembered crying as a kid and being told to toughen up. That's where it started. The belief that my emotions were a threat. In the mirror, I started to speak out loud. I'd say, "You're okay." Or, "I forgive you." At first it felt stupid. But over time, something shifted. I wasn't just seeing a broken addict. I was seeing a survivor. Each day, that reflection became less of a stranger. Each day, I moved closer to truth. In week 5, they gave us a new assignment: write letters to the people we hurt. Not to send. Just to write. I stared at the paper, pen in hand, frozen. My mind flashed through 100 names, some I hadn't thought about in years. Friends I ghosted. People I stole from. My sister. My mother. Every broken apology I owed stacked up in my chest like bricks. I started with my mom. The letter was short at first. I didn't know how to say, "I'm sorry I made you watch me disappear." But once the words came, they didn't stop. I wrote until my hand cramped. I wrote through the tears, through the shame, through the memory of her crying as I walked out of the house high again. She never tried to control me. She just begged me to come back. Not as a condition, but as a prayer. Then came the letter to my sister. I didn't know how to write about the necklace I stole, the one she wore every day after our grandmother died. I didn't know how to say I pawned a piece of her heart for a hit. But I told the truth. I told her I hated myself for it. That I remembered the way she looked at me when she found out, not with anger, but with heartbreak. That look stayed with me longer than any drug ever did. One by one I wrote them all. Letters to friends. To exes. To myself. Each one was like lifting a boulder off my chest. They weren't clean. They weren't poetic. But they were real. I didn't justify. I didn't defend. I just told the truth. I didn't know if I'd ever be forgiven. But that wasn't the point. The point was to stop hiding from what I'd done. To stand in the wreckage and say, yes, I did this. But I'm not that person anymore. It was the start of making peace with my past. Not to erase it, but to carry it differently. I never saw myself as spiritual. Faith was something I associated with rules, guilt, judgment, things I already had too much of. I didn't want someone watching over me. I didn't want to feel accountable to a higher power when I could barely stay accountable to myself. But one night, everything changed. It was raining outside, hard. The kind of rain that makes the world feel like it's drowning. I couldn't sleep. My body still ached in ways I didn't understand. There was a tightness in my chest that no deep breath could fix. All the letters I'd written, all the sessions I'd survived, all the apologies I still owed, it just collapsed on me. I went into the meditation room. It was dark. Silent. No one else was there. Just a single candle flickering in the corner. And I broke. I dropped to my knees and cried, not the controlled, polite kind, but the full body, soul-ripping kind. I didn't speak. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for anything specific. I just cried with my heart wide open. Everything I'd carried, every secret, every self-hate thought, every failure, I poured it out like I was bleeding invisible wounds. That was the moment I prayed. Without words. Without knowing who I was praying to. I just needed something, someone, to know I was there. That I wasn't giving up. That I didn't want to die this way. I didn't need answers. I just needed presence. And I swear to you, something answered. Not in a voice. Not in a flash of light. Just stillness. Peace. Like someone was holding all that pain with me, saying, I see you. You're not alone. It didn't fix everything. But it gave me a reason to keep going. After that night, I stopped saying I didn't believe. I didn't have to define it. I just knew something greater was walking beside me. Watching. Guiding. Waiting for me to choose life. That night, for the first time, I did. Recovery taught me a lot about loss. But it also showed me something I never expected, who was still there. After weeks in treatment, we were allowed limited phone time. I stared at my contact list for a long time, thumb hovering, unsure who I even had the right to call. I'd burned so many bridges I figured they'd all gone cold. But I called my sister. She answered on the second ring. Her voice cracked. Mine did too. I didn't know what to say. I expected rage. Or distance. Or the kind of silence that comes from too many broken promises. Instead, she said, I've been waiting. That moment undid me. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't lay out all the damage I'd caused. She just said she was proud of me for making the call. We talked for 10 minutes, and I spent 9 of them crying. Not from guilt this time, but from gratitude. I hadn't lost her. Then I called my mom. She answered before it even rang twice. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fear beneath it, The kind of fear that lives inside a parent's chest when they've already grieved a child who's still alive. I told her where I was. What I was doing. That I was trying, really trying. She didn't say much. Just, thank God. Some people didn't answer. Some never called back. And that's okay. Not everyone comes with you when you start over. But I realized that the ones who stayed, they didn't stay because they forgot what I'd done. They stayed because they remembered who I was underneath it all. That gave me strength I didn't know I had. Not just to keep going for me, but for them. For the version of me they still believed in. For the man I was becoming. Healing doesn't mean regaining everyone you lost. It means rebuilding trust, one truth at a time, with others, but mostly with yourself. And for the first time in years, I believed I was worth staying for. They warned us early on, sobriety doesn't erase your triggers. It just teaches you how to face them. I didn't really get it until I walked into the cafeteria one afternoon and smelled the cologne of a new staff member. It was the same scent as my old dealer. Just the smell, but it hit me like a punch to the chest. Suddenly I was back in his car, trading dignity for relief. My stomach twisted. My hands started to sweat. My body reacted before my mind caught up. That's how triggers work. They don't ask permission. They don't give you a heads up. A sound, a smell, a look, a memory, and suddenly you're in the past again, right on the edge of relapse. That night I couldn't sleep. I felt restless, haunted, like all the progress I made was paper thin. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But instead, I walked into the counselor's office and said the thing I never used to say. I need help right now. He nodded. No judgment. Just presence. He sat with me for an hour, no lectures, no pity. Just real conversation. He told me a trigger is like a wave. You don't stop it from coming, but you learn how to surf it instead of letting it drown you. We started working on a plan. Identifying the people, places, feelings, and thoughts that flipped those old switches. I started journaling more, writing down every time my body responded to something unexpected. I started noticing patterns. I wasn't weak for getting triggered. I was human. But more importantly, I learned I didn't have to react the way I used to. That was power. Triggers still come. They always will. But now I greet them like old ghosts. I don't invite them in. But I don't run anymore either. And every time I face one and stay sober? That's a win no one sees, but I carry it like a trophy. There's a moment in recovery when you stop surviving and start rebuilding. For me, that shift came slowly, almost too quietly to notice. I woke up one morning, and instead of dreading the day, I felt ready. Not happy. Not healed. But steady. That's when they introduced a new exercise, life mapping. We were each given a big sheet of paper and asked to draw out our story. The key moments. The trauma. The victories. The relapses. The moments we chose survival over surrender. At first, it felt impossible. How do you put chaos into lines and circles? How do you chart pain? But I tried. I drew the night I first used. The first lie I told. The moment I knew I needed help. I marked the heartbreaks, the overdoses, the cold nights alone. Then I marked the call to rehab. Detox. My sister's voice on the phone. The prayer I couldn't explain. Looking at it all laid out, it broke me. Not because of the darkness, but because of the light. I could see it now, like stars poking through. For so long I believed my story was only one thing, shame. But that wasn't true. Not anymore. We pinned the maps to the walls. Not to show off, but to stand beside each other in full honesty. That room, covered in raw, messy, powerful timelines, became sacred ground. We weren't just addicts. We were survivors. Storytellers. Architects of what comes next. That's the moment I realized, I'm allowed to rewrite the ending. The past happened. It's inked. But the next chapter? That's mine. I get to decide what I do with the pain. Whether it defines me or refines me. I used to think recovery was about fixing what was broken. But now I see, it's about building something new with what's left. And maybe, just maybe, that's even stronger. Step 9 was the one I feared the most, making amends. Not just saying, sorry. Not just hoping time would do the healing for me. But actually showing up, owning the damage, and asking for nothing in return. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not even kindness. Just truth. The staff was clear. We don't make amends to feel better. We make them to do better. I started with the people I knew I could reach. My sister was first. We sat on a video call, and I read from my letter. My hands shook. My throat cracked. I told her I was sorry, not just for the necklace, but for the years I disappeared. For not being the brother she deserved. For making her grieve someone still breathing. She didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. When I finished, she just said, "Thank you." And then, after a long pause, "I love you." I never stopped. That moment will live in me forever. But not every conversation ended like that. A friend I used to party with didn't respond at all. Another told me to never contact her again. And one old friend told me, "I'm glad you're getting clean. But the damage is done." That one hurt the most. But I remembered what my counselor said. We make amends to clean our side of the street, not to force someone back onto it. Each apology was a brick removed from the wall I'd built around my heart. I didn't expect anyone to welcome me back. I didn't need that anymore. What I needed was to look each wound in the eye and say, "I did this. And I'm choosing differently now." That's what making peace looks like. It's not always hugs and healing. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's goodbye. But every time, it's freedom. And with each honest word, I felt myself getting lighter. Less buried. More whole. I didn't expect joy to feel so unfamiliar. One afternoon, during a group session, someone cracked a joke about their detox hallucinations, how they thought the fire alarm was talking to them in Spanish. It was absurd. Ridiculous. But for some reason, it hit me just right, and I laughed. Not the polite kind. Not a smirk. A real, stomach-deep, eyes-watering laugh. It caught me off guard. I hadn't laughed like that in years. I forgot what it felt like, to be so in the moment that your body just lets go. No filter. No fear. No chemicals forcing the feeling. Just presence. That laugh was a turning point. Because up to that point, everything in recovery had been heavy. Necessary but heavy. Painful reflections. Deep confrontations. Long nights. But that laugh? That reminded me I was still alive. That joy hadn't abandoned me. It had just been buried under layers of pain and poison. After that, I started noticing the light moments more. Morning coffee that actually tasted good. The way the sun hit the floor in the hallway. The small victory of finishing a meal without shame. Conversations that weren't about survival, but about music or movies or memories before addiction took hold. It wasn't constant. Joy came in flashes. But it came. And with it came guilt. I wasn't sure I deserved to laugh. Not after all the pain I'd caused. Not after the people I'd lost. But one of the counselors looked at me and said, "You're not laughing because you forgot what happened. You're laughing because you survived it." That hit hard. Because joy in recovery isn't ignorance. It's rebellion. It's choosing light after being consumed by darkness for so long. It's proof that healing isn't just about avoiding relapse, it's about rediscovering life. That first sober laugh wasn't just funny. It was sacred. A crack in the armor. A signal that hope had room to breathe. The day they told me I was ready for discharge, I didn't feel relieved. I felt terrified. For weeks, the rehab center had been my shield from the world. Inside those walls, I was surrounded by people who understood me, routines that kept me grounded, and counselors who reminded me daily that I wasn't alone. Out there? Out there was the same world I'd escaped from. Same streets. Same memories. Same temptations. Part of me wanted to stay forever. But recovery isn't meant to be permanent isolation. It's meant to prepare you to live again, out there, where it matters. So I packed my things. One small bag. A journal full of truths. A mind still tender but clear. A heart not fixed, but beating strong. And a quiet fear I couldn't deny. What if I fail again? My counselor met me at the door. She said, "You're not leaving cured. You're leaving capable." Those words anchored me. I moved into a sober living house, structured but with freedom. Real-world triggers, but also support. I met roommates who were walking the same line between fear and faith. We cooked meals together. Attended meetings. Shared relapse dreams in the middle of the night. It wasn't easy. But it was real. Suddenly, I had to make choices again. No one checking if I woke up. No one watching when I left the house. And that's when the voices came back, not the kind you hear, but the kind you feel. One hit wouldn't ruin everything. Just a drink. Just a taste. You've been good. You've earned it. But I didn't listen. Because every morning I made it through sober was another piece of evidence that I could keep going. I leaned on my program. I called my sponsor. I prayed, not always with words, but always with truth. I reminded myself that healing isn't a straight line, it's a series of choices. Leaving rehab wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything. Sobriety gave me back my life, but it also forced me to ask a harder question: now what? For so long, my entire existence had revolved around staying alive. Don't use. Don't disappear. Don't go back. But once I learned how to survive, I realized I didn't know how to live. I needed purpose. Not just sobriety. Not just clean time on a chip. Something deeper. Something that reminded me why it mattered that I made it through. That purpose found me in a folding chair at a recovery meeting. I was sharing that night, just a normal check-in, and I saw someone in the back of the room. He was younger than me. Hoodie pulled up. Arms crossed. Eyes blank. I knew that look. I had been that look. After the meeting, he walked up and said, "I didn't plan to say anything. But what you said? That was me last week." He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just nodded. And I knew, this is it. This is why I'm still here. Not to be perfect. Not to preach. But to stand in my truth so others know they're not alone in theirs. To be the voice I needed when I was breaking. To be a mirror for someone else's possibility. I started volunteering at the center I came from. Leading small groups. Sitting with guys in detox. Listening more than I spoke. And every time someone said, "You get it," I felt a piece of me heal even more. Because purpose isn't always loud. Sometimes it's sitting next to someone in silence, letting them cry, letting them scream, letting them believe in life again, just by existing in yours. I didn't go through hell just to say I made it out. I went through it so I could hold the door open behind me. And maybe, just maybe, that's what redemption looks like. I thought the past would stay in the past. But healing doesn't delete your history. It just changes the way you carry it. One night, months into my sober living routine, I got a message. A name I hadn't seen in years lit up my screen. Someone from my using days. Someone I owed apologies to. Someone I hurt when I was at my worst. My heart dropped. I didn't open the message right away. My hands shook like they used to in detox. I sat there for an hour, staring at my phone, every old instinct rising like smoke. Run. Ghost. Hide. But I didn't. When I finally opened it, it said, "Hey. I heard you got clean. I'm trying to get there too. How did you do it?" That moment shattered me, in the best way. Because the past wasn't knocking to haunt me. It was knocking for help. We talked. I told him the truth. I didn't glamorize it. I didn't give advice I wasn't asked for. I just shared my story, the way others had once done for me. We ended the conversation with no promises. Just mutual understanding. Mutual respect. And I realized, the past doesn't own me anymore. It visits. It reminds. But it no longer defines me. Later that week, I walked past an old bar I used to black out in. I stopped. Stared at it. Waited for the wave of regret or temptation or sadness. But nothing came. Just quiet. Not because I forgot. But because I'd forgiven. My story didn't change what I did. But it changed who I was. And the more I lived in truth, the less power the past had over me. That's the secret no one tells you. Freedom isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering, and choosing differently. There was a morning, quiet, ordinary, where I made coffee, stepped outside, and realized something was missing. The chaos. For so long, I didn't know how to live without it. I was addicted to noise, to drama, to the constant pull between survival and self-destruction. But that morning the world was still. The air was cold. My hands were warm around the mug. Birds chirped. My breathing was calm. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending. I was just here. It hit me then, this is peace. Not the loud kind. Not the movie scene version. The real kind. The kind that feels like finally exhaling after years of holding your breath. The kind that doesn't need applause. It just is. Peace, for me, meant accepting that not everything would be perfect. That some people wouldn't forgive me. That cravings might still whisper. That grief would come in waves. But I didn't have to run from it anymore. I'd made amends where I could. I'd made peace with what I couldn't fix. I'd forgiven the people who left, and more importantly, the one who stayed, me. I wasn't chasing a high. I wasn't chasing a future. I was here, grounded in the now. That kind of presence used to terrify me. Now, it sustains me. Peace isn't a finish line. It's a practice. Some days it's harder. Some nights still carry shadows. But I no longer numb. I no longer vanish. I stay. I've learned to sit with joy and not sabotage it. To accept love without suspicion. To rest without guilt. To cry without shame. To be alive without apology. Healing isn't about erasing the old version of me. It's about loving myself through every version I've ever been. And now, when I wake up and the world is quiet, I smile. Because this calm, steady, sober moment is the life I fought for. I used to think my story was my scar. That the damage defined me. That the pain was permanent. That every time someone looked at me, they'd only see the broken parts. The addict. The liar. The person who disappeared when things got hard. But now, I see it differently. The scar is part of the story, but it's not the whole thing. It's not even the most important part. It's a reminder of what I went through, yes, but also proof that I healed. Proof that I survived. Proof that I chose to live. I don't hide my story anymore. I speak at meetings. I talk to kids in schools. I visit the same rehab I once walked into shaking and hopeless. Not because I want attention, but because I know what it's like to sit in that same dark corner, wondering if life can ever feel good again. I tell them it can. I tell them peace is possible, even when your past is messy. I tell them strength looks like asking for help, again and again if you have to. I tell them healing isn't about perfection, it's about honesty. And I remind myself every time, you're not who you were. You're who you chose to become. I still carry the scar. But it no longer burns. It no longer controls me. Now it's just a mark, a quiet badge of survival. It doesn't speak for me, but it speaks with me. People say, "You seem so calm now." Or, "You look different." And I do. Because when you stop running from the storm, and start walking through it, you change. You don't forget who you were. You just stop letting that version of yourself lead the way. The scar is there. But I am here. Whole. Awake. Free. Recovery isn't a one-time decision. It's a choice I make every single day, sometimes every single hour. The choice to stay present. To stay honest. To stay awake in a world that taught me to go numb. There are still moments when the old voice tries to creep in. Just one. No one would know. You deserve a break. You've come so far. But now I know that voice isn't me, it's a shadow of who I was. And I don't have to listen to it anymore. Because now I've seen what's on the other side of pain. Real connection. Real purpose. Real love. I have relationships built on truth, not manipulation. I have quiet mornings I never used to believe were possible. I have people who call me just to say they're proud. And I have myself, clear, imperfect, and alive. Every day I wake up and remind myself, you don't have to be perfect to be free. You just have to keep choosing truth. I still go to meetings. Still pray. Still write. Still sit with hard feelings when they show up. But now, I do it with grace, not punishment. With compassion, not shame. The person I am today is someone I never thought I'd meet. Not just clean. Not just functional. But whole. And maybe the most beautiful part. I get to help others find their way out too. I get to look someone in the eye and say, I've been there. And there's life on the other side. Healing without numbness isn't easy. But it's worth everything. Because it's real. Because it lasts. Because it's mine.